Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, permit me to join with you in wishing my colleague, Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture, the Charles Ramsden, a happy birthday, as well as our Vice President, the Honorable Dr. Bharrat Jagdeo. Mr. Speaker, I also wish to commend the Senior Minister in the Office of the President with responsibility for finance and his staff at the Ministry of Finance for the commendable job they did in putting together Budget 2024. Mr. Speaker, I also wish to further commend my own staff from the Ministry of Natural Resources and our agencies. Mr. Speaker, I'm a bit confused with regards to who is shadowing who, because for the last 3 years, we have had several shadow ministers of natural resources. But nevertheless, I want to congratulate the shadows. It means that you're preparing for a long haul, and a long haul you will get in opposition. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2024 is a continuation of our program, our policies, and our projects to build out a new modern Guyana that all of us want to see and to pass on to future generations to come. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2024 is building on the foundation that was started in 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023. Mr. Speaker, we have heard many descriptions for Budget 2024. We have heard that it is an oil and gas budget. We have heard that it is a private sector budget. We have heard that it is an infrastructure budget, sand and stone or cement and stone budget. We have heard that it is friends, family and favorites budget. Mr. Speaker, we have also heard that Budget 2024 has nothing for the ordinary people. Mr. Speaker, I wish to crave your indulgence. Over 20,000 scholarships issued to Guyanese. Isn't that benefits to the ordinary people in our country? Mr. Speaker, 50,000 house lots. Isn't that benefits to the ordinary people? Mr. Speaker, over 1,000 community roads stretching all 10 regions. Isn't that benefits to the ordinary people? Mr. Speaker, the creation of over 50,000 jobs. Isn't that benefit to the ordinary people? As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, I heard one honorable member said we're not doing anything to address unemployment in Guyana. It is obvious that that honorable member is divorced from the reality of what is happening in our country. As a matter of fact, today we have a shortage of labor. That is one of our biggest issues in most of the sectors, including mining, including the forestry sector. And yet, an honorable member will come here and say, we are doing nothing to address unemployment. If we are spending billions on infrastructure, isn't that creating employment? Isn't that creating benefits for the ordinary people?
No, don't kill themselves.
The Honorable Ramjitan spoke about infrastructure this morning, but he only highlighted the contractors. What about the people who will be employed by the contractors? What about the people who provide the goods and services? What about the people who will do the surveys? What about the people who will give the services? The engineers, the draftsmen. It has trickle-down effects, Mr. Speaker, and these are all benefits for the ordinary Guyanese. Mr. Speaker, 12 new hospitals across all the regions in Guyana. Isn't that benefit to the ordinary people? Mr. Speaker, all the new highways being built out to alleviate the traffic congestion because of the amount of vehicles being registered in our country every single day. Mr. Speaker, and that by itself speaks to the development that is taking place across our country and the confidence that people have in the economy and the country and the government, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at one time, we were struggling to register 9,999 vehicles in a year. Now we are registering over 30,000 vehicles in 1 year, Mr. Speaker. That is development. That is development. Mr. Speaker, an ordinary person can afford to purchase a motor car not only for themselves, but for their children attending universities. Today, that is possible under the People's Progressive Party civic government. Mr. Speaker, the new Demerara Bridge, the bridge to Suriname, the Linden Highway, wouldn't that benefit the ordinary people, Mr. Speaker? Are we so divorced from reality that we don't see the development taking place across the country, where every single Guyanese is included in the developmental agenda of our government? Mr. Speaker, we should not come to the National Assembly only to gain cheap political points by misleading people. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our sports ground and a new stadium being built, wouldn't that benefit ordinary Guyanese? Mr. Speaker, the training college being built at Port Moran, the Guyana Technical Training College, which will be specialized in oil and gas training and hospitality, wouldn't that benefit the ordinary people? The 20,000 gold scholarships, wouldn't that benefit the ordinary people, Mr. Speaker? The many training that is being done by the Board of Industrial Training, isn't that benefiting the ordinary Guyanese people? Mr. Speaker, our students' cash grant. And we have our students here. The Honorable Member, Mr. Henry, broke it down. I don't know how is it that he did his maths, but as usual, there is always an issue with maths. But he broke it down that the government is only giving X amount to the students of this country every day. But what did your government do to the children of this country? You talk about the cash grant. You talk about the cash grant. You took back the cash grant from the children of this country. We made a promise that we are going to reinstate the cash grant, and not only reinstate it, but we are going to double it by the end of our first term in government. And we are well on our way to achieving that target, Mr. Speaker. In 2024, every single school child, whether in private school or public school, will receive $45,000, Mr. Speaker. And their ordinary Guyanese, and their parents ordinary Guyanese, Mr. Speaker. So how is it that we can come here and say that budget 2024 will not benefit the ordinary people of this country, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, the CSO program. We heard the Honorable Member Vincent Henry speaking on the CSO program. And if I was in his position, I would stay away from certain topics or certain sectors, because it is your government. It is your government that sent home almost 2,000 young Amerindians, CSO officers in the hinterland regions. Your government did that, your government did that. Mr. Speaker, today we have re-employed over 2,500 CSOs assisting with community development across the hinterland communities in this country. Mr. Speaker, Guyana is probably one of the few countries in the world that there is no tax on fuel. That there is absolutely no tax on fuel for about 2 years now. And we heard Minister Ashley Singh say it will remain that way. Isn't that a measure to curb cost of living? Isn't that a measure that will incentivize the mining sector, the agriculture sector, the forestry sector, the transportation sector? Mr. Speaker, that single incentive or measure will boost the economic activities in almost every single sector in our country. Mr. Speaker, the reinstatement of the joint services bonus. And we love to speak so much about the joint services. But you took away the bonus from the joint services. We reinstated that. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, over 15,000 ordinary Guyanese, mostly women, have been employed under the pathway program. The part-time workers, Mr. Speaker, and the ordinary Guyanese, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, removal of VAT on mining equipment, forestry equipment, agriculture equipment, sports equipment, medical supplies, water, electricity, medical supplies, educational supplies. Isn't that incentives to benefit the ordinary people, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, increasing the NIS payment from 35,000 to 43,000 wouldn't that benefit the ordinary person, Mr. Speaker? So, Mr. Speaker, when we come here and we say that budget 2024 will not benefit the ordinary persons, we should think twice, Mr. Speaker. We should definitely think twice. Mr. Speaker, increase in old age pension. And we have heard from the opposition, oh, it's a measly $3,000 that we are giving our pension. But Mr. Speaker, if I can take you back, Mr. Speaker, if I can take you back
Take us to your ministry.
to 2016, when the APNU AFC was in government, the old age pension increased from 17,000 to 18,200. That is an increase of $1,200, Mr. Speaker. And it's not done there. Mr. Speaker, in 2017, the old age pension increased by $18,000 to $19,000, an increase of $1,000. And we're not done there, Mr. Speaker. In 2018, the old age pension increased from $19,000 to $19,500. $500 increase. $500 increase, Mr. Speaker. $500 increase, Mr. Speaker. And today you come here, today you come to the National Assembly and you condemn the increase given by the PPP survey government. When you were giving pensioners $500, when you were giving pensioners $500 increase, and you speak about oil money, and you speak about oil money. But if I can remind the Honorable Sherwin Wonder, he asked if he had the same amount of money, they would have done wonders. But I want to remind him that your term in office from 2015 to 2020, you spent over $1 trillion. What did you do? Where are the results? Point us to a project so that we can go and say, yes, this is how Guyanese benefited. Tell us what you did so that we can say, yes, the $1 trillion was well spent. But what I can reassure you is that when we come back here a year from now, we can point you in the direction where we have spent the $1 trillion and how Guyanese will have benefited from it. I can assure you that. Mr. Speaker, the threshold has been increased to $100,000. It simply means, Mr. Speaker, that 13,000 ordinary Guyanese will no longer be paying PAYE. That is what it simply means, Mr. Speaker. It means more disposable income in the pockets of our ordinary Guyanese. Mr. Speaker, added to that is a 6.5 increase retroactive in 2023. But Mr. Speaker, the opposition has only brought forward one recommendation to assist workers, and that is to increase salaries. But Mr. Speaker, it is not only about increasing salaries, because we are doing that. But we have put measures into the budget to ensure that people save, that people have more disposable income in their pockets.
That's right.
And also we are working on projects that will cut the cost of living by reducing the cost of power generation in our country, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, when they speak of benefits not being trickled down to the ordinary Guyanese, Mr. Speaker, it is politicking. Mr. Speaker, we have heard from the last two speakers from the opposition some glorious words from 2015, 2020, and the vision. Mr. Speaker, we have heard about the APNU AFC vision. Mr. Speaker, I would like to say, I would like to inform the opposition that very APNU AFC vision, you got humiliated in 2016, you got humiliated in 2018, you lost the seat of government in 2020, and worse yet, you were trashed in 2023 local government with that very vision. So it is time that you rethink that vision, because the people cannot be fooled again. They are not buying your vision. It's only talks. We need to see action, Mr. Speaker. That is what the people of this country want to see. They want to see action. Mr. Speaker, it was also mentioned that we are raiding the Natural Resources Fund. We are raiding the Sovereign Wealth Fund. One other member, Mr. Ford, when he spoke yesterday morning, said that we took out the safeguards from the Natural Resources Fund Act so that we can squander oil money. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that the 2021 December Natural Resources Fund Act actually strengthened the transparency and accountability in how we manage the oil and gas revenue in this country. Mr. Speaker, previously it was left on the whims and fancies of the Minister of Finance to decide how much money should flow into the consolidated fund. We changed that. We changed that so that the minister will not sit and decide how much money, but there is a formula to determine every single year how much money will flow into the national budget. Mr. Speaker, we have an investment committee in place now. We have a board of directors to manage and to advise the policymakers. Mr. Speaker, further, there is only two ways. There is only two ways money can flow out of the Natural Resources Fund Act into the budget or can be spent. And those two ways, Mr. Speaker, is by way of the national budget. Is by way of the national budget. And any funds appropriated to the national budget, it must be examined and approved right here. And that is what we are doing right now. We are debating this week, and next week you will have the opportunity to ask all the questions that you want, and we will answer them. And we will answer them to show you how the money will be spent. Added to that, you have the sitting PSC chairman who will scrutinize that in the parliament. Mr. Speaker, we have safeguards to ensure that there is transparency and accountability, pure transparency and accountability in the sector. The other way, Mr. Speaker, money can flow from the Natural Resources Fund is if there's a national disaster or emergency. But if money is taken out for a national disaster emergency, it must be approved by the National Assembly. So in other words, Mr. Speaker, and to the people of this country, there is no way anyone can use money from the Natural Resources Fund without the approval of the National Assembly. That is what we strike. That is how we strengthen the Natural Resources Fund Act, Mr. Speaker. Because oil and gas can be a curse or it can be a blessing, and we all know that. Look around us at our neighboring countries, and you will see that. It is the prudent management of the sector. It is the prudent management of the sector and ensuring that there is proper accountability and transparency and ensuring that the benefits reaches every single Guyanese. That will bring us opportunities from the oil and gas sector, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the previous speaker spoke glowingly about the respect for democracy. Really, this is the very opposition, Mr. Speaker. This is the very opposition, Mr. Speaker, that held this country hostage from the 2nd of March to the 2nd of April. We endured 33 days of recount in this very house because this very opposition could not respect democracy. But today they come to this National Assembly and preach about democracy. 5 months, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me turn my attention. Mr. Speaker, let me turn my attention to forestry. And a lot has been said about the forestry sector, Mr. Speaker. But every single Guyanese in this country know that in 2020, when we took over the Guyana Forestry Commission, the commission was bankrupt. A country that boasts the second highest forest coverage in the world after Suriname, with over 1,000 different species, was bankrupt. The Guyana forestry sector was bankrupt. And then the honorable member, Mr. 𝐁𝐔𝐃𝐆𝐄𝐓, came to the National Assembly, Mr. Speaker, and said that they took over a bankrupt commission in 2015 and used an Auditor General report to quote or to substantiate his claims. But Mr. Speaker, I have a document here. And this document says that the Guyana Forestry Commission must transfer $100 million from the commission to the Ministry of Finance in September of 2015. In September of 2015, this document says that the Guyana Forestry Commission must transfer $100 million from the accounts of the Guyana Forestry Commission to the Ministry of Finance. And yet, the honorable member came to the commission and said that in 2015, the commission was bankrupt. Mr. Speaker, what the honorable member did not do is to read that report properly. He read one account. There are 7 accounts. And indeed, one of the accounts was in overdraft, but the other account had over $100 million. The other 2 accounts had $151 million. The member did not report that to the National Assembly. He did not report, but he came here and said that they took over a bankrupt commission. Mr. Speaker, we should not come to the National Assembly and mislead the House and the people of this country. Mr. Speaker, we took over, and even if for argument's sake, you took over a bankrupt forestry commission, which is not true. In 2015, what did you do? Because in 2020, it was still bankrupt. So it means that you simply did nothing in 5 years. You took over bankrupt and you handed it over bankrupt. You did nothing, absolutely nothing, for the sake of argument. For the sake of argument. In less than 3 years, we have torn the sector around. We have torn that sector around. But Ms. Finance, the honorable member, came and said that exports has declined from 2019 to 2023. But yes, Mr. Speaker, export has declined. Export has declined. But is it that is the main objective of the forestry sector? Should we keep exporting our logs? Should we keep exporting our logs? No. No is the answer. One of the reasons why we still remain a developing country today, even though we have so many natural resources, it is because we have always exported our primary products. And from all that we're hearing, Mr. Speaker, it seems as though the opposition is stuck in that mood. They just want to export everything. Mr. Speaker, the local demand has grown so much. The local demand has grown so much that the Guyana Forestry Commission is supplying the local demand. Should we neglect the local demand and export because we want to come here and report that our export figures is glorious? Should we do that? By doing that, we are suffering our own people, because when they go to a sawmill or a lumberyard, it's either it's not available or the price is so high that they can't pay for it. It's simple. Should we continue exporting primary products, Mr. Speaker? The answer is no. So you don't have to come here and boast about the exports has declined. The exports did decline, but production increased. It tells you something about what is happening in our country. It tells you about the development that is taking place in our country. That is what it says. That is what it speaks to, the development that is taking place. And when the Honorable Sharon Olin spoke, he spoke about gold decline, bauxite decline. And when he reached the sand, and when he reached the aggregates, hold on, just so. When he reached the patience, when he reached stone and sand, he said that, oh, it is because of the increased demand. Now the increased demand didn't happen just like that, Mr. Speaker. You think the increased demand happened like magic? How come it didn't happen in 2015 to 2020? But it is happening now. It is because of the prudent management of the economy and our ability to bring in investors in almost every single sector across the country. That is why the demand is increased. It is because of the confidence of people in the economy and the government that they're investing in this country. One person complained about the high prices of land, but for many ordinary Guyanese, that is a positive for them. That is a positive because the value of their property has increased. Because the value of their property has increased. 10 years ago, it was probably worth $1 million. Today, you can get 10 million. That is what we did for the ordinary people in this country. Mr. Speaker, no, I don't need to take a break. Mr. Speaker, coming back to the forestry sector. Mr. Speaker, as I mentioned, we should be proud of our country. We, as patriots, whether we're in opposition or government, we should go about praising the Guyana forestry sector. Forget about politics aside, Guyana boasts the second highest forest coverage in the world. That is absolute gold in the context of climate change and what is happening around the world. 86% of our country is covered in forest, second to Suriname only. We boast one of the lowest deforestation rates in the world. All of us should be proud of that. And not to criticize our exports will have decreased. We boast one of the lowest deforestation rates in the world among forested countries. In the Low Carbon Development Strategy 2030, our commitment is 0.07% deforestation. Today, our deforestation rate is 0.036%. And we are working to bring down that deforestation even further by adding value to products and not to export wood or logs. We are adding value to our products through the housing project, through the coals project, through the utilization of wood waste, and the numerous sawmill projects that are being opened now throughout the entire country. Mr. Speaker, we are the first country in the world to have signed 2 agreements with the European Union. The Voluntary Partnership Agreement, which is the roadmap to ensure that Guyana will be probably only the 3rd country to receive a FLET license. The 3rd country in the world among forested countries, and the Forest Partnership Agreement. We are the only country in the world to sign those 2 agreements with the European Union. That is our commitment to fighting climate change and keeping our forests intact. Mr. Speaker, we are the first country in the world to have our entire forests at a jurisdictional level art certified and sign the landmark deal of a minimum of $750 million for 30% of our carbon credits. For 30% of our carbon credits, because I heard yesterday one member, Mr. Speaker, mentioned all of our forests. And that is the misinformation that is going out there, that the government sold the forests. Mr. Speaker, we never sold any forests. We sold carbon credits, meaning the ability of our forests to trap carbon dioxide so that it don't go up in the atmosphere and damage the ozone layer and heat up the world. That is what we sold. We didn't sell the forests. We didn't sell our forests, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the gentleman, the honorable member is right. We signed on to the Minamata Convention, and we did so because we care about the environment. We did so knowing that we are a mining country, that we're involved in mining. We have a vibrant mining sector, but yet we signed on to the Minamata Convention. Mr. Speaker, further to that, we have made commitments that we will have 30% of our land mass, so we will expand our protected areas by 30% by 2030 and restore our biodiversity by 30% by 2030. Mr. Speaker, we have heard a lot. We have heard a lot about the 15% from the carbon credit deal that goes to the Amerindian community. And I would like to put on record, contrary to what was mentioned by the honorable member Vincent Henry, that we determine or we dictate how the money is spent in the communities. Mr. Speaker, in one year we disbursed $4.7 billion to 242 communities throughout the community. In 1 year, Mr. Speaker, over 500 projects. And the honorable member very well know that the community, they will have to meet as a community, have their minutes and decide on their project. And they control the money because the monies are already in their bank account. It is already in their bank account. But for accountability and transparency and to learn advice and guidance, the Ministry of Amerindian Affairs has that role to look over the project. It is not to determine what they're doing, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I turn my attention to goal, and I know the honorable member, Mr. Duncan, is happy to hear about goal.
Before you can put some luster on the goal, you need 5 minutes to conclude.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask that the honorable member be given 5 minutes to conclude his very excellent presentation.
Thank you very much, Minister Teixeira. Honorable Minister, you may continue.
Thank you,
Member
Mr.
to
Speaker.
conclude in 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, indeed, I'm not there to mislead the National Assembly. Indeed, there's a decline in gold. And this decline, Mr. Speaker, those of you who are following the sector, this decline started in 2017 and it has continued. Check the figures and you will see. The decline started in 2017 and it has continued. The peak production that we had was in 2016, and mainly because of the investment of Troy Resources and Aurora Gold Mine brought by the PUP Civic Administration, mainly because of their contribution to our production. We peaked in 2016, and since then, we have been on the decline. Mr. Speaker, besides some Troy Resources being closed down, there is a severe shortage of labor in the mining sector. Most people's preference is to work on the coast where they're earning almost the same salary that they once received in the gold bush, as it's commonly called. Mr. Speaker, the weather condition hasn't been too kind either. In 2021, 2022, there was severe flooding. In 2023, we had severe drought, and we're all Guyanese, we know that. Mr. Speaker, resources that were once accessible have now been depleted. It can't remain there forever. It simply means, Mr. Speaker, it simply means that the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission have to look at new measures, have to look at new ways in which we can help miners and to incentivize and to grow, especially the small and medium scale operations. And because of that, I want to thank Minister Singh for the whole $400 million that's in budget 2024 to start the mineral inventory process in our mining districts. We were unable to do so, Mr. Speaker, because of the cost. It is very costly to do the survey in all the mining districts. This budget, it is a start to do that mineral survey. So now we can allocate blocks and claims in a more informed manner, the same way in which we can do it in forestry because of the National Forest Inventory. Today, we are starting the mineral inventory so that we can allocate blocks in a more informed way, thereby also, Mr. Speaker, protecting our forests and keeping our deforestation rate low. Mr. Speaker, one of our large-scale gold company operating for the first year will start producing through its underground mine, very first one in the history of our country. Mr. Speaker, it is also important that as an agency, we open new areas. We make it accessible. We make lands accessible that we have done in the Troy Resources area, thereby giving 82 small Guyanese miners claims in that area, most of whom have already started their operations. Mr. Speaker, it is also on the cards, and I'm sure the honorable member will be happy to hear that we have to work with the Amerindian communities to regularize mining activities in indigenous communities. That is definitely a priority for us. But Mr. Speaker, I am not worried because we have extensive exploration activity occurring in the Omai area, in the Marudi area, in Oko West, in Eagle Mountain in Region 8, in Torparo. These are all exploration ongoing right now. These are foreign investors that hold exploration license and have already discovered significant deposits of gold already. Because, Mr. Speaker, we have to continue as a country. It doesn't stop with us. It doesn't stop with us. Mr. Speaker, bauxite. It was mentioned that the decline of bauxite started under our government and that the export has reduced significantly from 2019 to 2023. Well, Mr. Speaker, the APNU AFC government contributed to that. You chase Roussel out. You manage the industrial action between Roussel and the workers wrongfully and woefully. 1,200 persons lost their jobs. Mr. Speaker, in my final minutes, I want to say that in 2024 too, we will be focusing a lot on critical minerals. Critical minerals, especially minerals like lithium, that is needed for the transition to renewable energy. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I want to say that the year 2024 will see an increase of 45.7% in production in the oil and gas sector, especially with our third FPSO Prosperity moving towards full production in maybe a month or two from today. We will have 3 FPSO producing at maximum capacity, giving us almost 650,000 barrels of oil per day. Mr. Speaker, we are also in the process of approving the 6th project, the Whiptail project, which will take us to almost 850,000, 900,000 barrels by 2025, 2026. So, Mr. Speaker, the future for us looks bright. And I want to say that to all Guyanese, that budget 2024 is continuing the foundation that is laid for a new, modern, prosperous Guyana for every single citizen of our beautiful country. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable.